Hi, and welcome to the second video about writing yearbook stories. I'm Ann Gardner. I'm the advisor of the Caroline Yearbook, and I know that you're a new reporter, and hopefully you understand now how to conduct your interviews, plan who you're going to talk to, how that interview will go, and you've had your questions answered about getting the information for your stories. So with this video, we're going to talk about how to specifically write them and some of the things about style that you'll need to also know. So let me get started with that. Pull up a PowerPoint that we're going to use. Okay, so on the last video, as I mentioned, we've already covered how to come up with a story angle, preparing questions, interviewing, writing out the quotes. So at this point, you have learned how to do everything but write the story, and that's what we're about to get to soon. But first, there's a few things we're going to cover, some do's and don'ts for yearbook stories. The first thing is write only in third-person point of view. They, students, people. You're going to leave out references to yourself, I or me or we. That's first person. You're also going to leave out second person, you or your. Only in very rare circumstances do we include something other than third person. The paragraphs need to be very short, no more than 1 or 2 sentences for each paragraph. But the sentences don't need to be choppy. They need to be combined with information to make just a smooth sentence. So here's a couple of examples. A bad example, Michelle Mustang is a senior. She works in Cafe 52. She said she loves her job. Okay, really choppy, short sentences. Instead, you can say, Senior Michelle Mustang works in Cafe 52 and says she loves her job. So that's one sentence. It reads a whole lot smoother. Some other do's and don'ts, use simple words that are easy to understand. Yearbook writing is not academic writing. We're not expecting you to use a large vocabulary in your book writing. We want you to use words that your reader can easily understand, otherwise they won't want to read it. The story should be 300 to 350 words. That's the minimum and the maximum. If the story is shorter than 300, you need to add to it. You could easily add another quote or maybe 2 quotes from sources. If the story is too long, find information that doesn't seem as important and cut that part out. The editor won't want to do that for you. She's going to want to ask you to cut it or make it longer yourself. Never use your opinion in a yearbook story. It's supposed to be objective and simply tell the opinions of other people, but not yours. If you do use your opinion, you'll be asked to remove it. So here's what not to do. A new dress code began in the spring. Everyone should follow it, even though it's stupid. Okay, that's pretty obviously the reporter's opinion. So instead, this would be a better choice. Some students said they were upset about the new dress code. I think sleeveless tops should be okay, said Senior Michelle Mustang. So we still have the point that some people didn't like it, but it's not the reporter's opinion. Don't use the term when asked or quoted. You wouldn't need to use when asked because the reader already knows that you would have asked them or you wouldn't have an answer. And using the word quoted just doesn't really, it's not very professional. So just use said or says, depending if you're writing the story in present tense or past tense. But put the attribution, said, after a direct quote, not before. It reads a little bit better. So don't put Senior Michelle Mustang quoted, I love basketball. Well, you're not going to start with her name, and you also aren't going to use that word quoted. Instead, this works better. I love basketball, said Senior Michelle Mustang. And you might, in English class, have been told to use words other than said. You might have been told in the past to use stated or exclaimed or questioned. But in journalism, we just use said or says. Just that. That's all that's needed. Don't bury a direct quote in the middle of a paragraph. Instead, begin a new paragraph wherever you have a direct quote. So here's the wrong way to do it. The women's basketball players said they enjoyed the game against William Woods College more than the rest of the games. It was so awesome to beat them 106-10, said Senior Michelle Mustang. That quote is buried in that paragraph. So what we want to do instead is this. The women's basketball players said they enjoyed the game against William Woods College more than the rest of the games. It was so awesome to beat them 106-10, said senior Michelle Mustang. So we started a new paragraph with that, so it's very clear what quote was from Michelle Mustang. You must include each student's classification and each faculty or employee title in the story. This information is in the journalism classroom, so you can easily look it up. You can also ask the person you interview for the information. So you can ask a student what classification they are, although sometimes they will give you the wrong one, but normally they'll give you the correct one. Remember that the story will be read next August when the yearbook is handed out. So this kind of makes things a little odd. You have to write the story so it will make sense to read next August. You have to always have that in the back of your mind. So instead of saying, when the men's soccer team played last month, they beat Williams Baptist College in the district conference, instead of that, you can't use last month because someone reading it next August might think you mean July. They won't necessarily know. So you need to be specific. When the men's soccer team played in December, they beat Williams Baptist College in the district conference. Okay, let's go ahead and talk briefly about Associated Press style. This is, you'll hear us refer to it as AP style. This is not the same as APA style, which is American Psychological Association. That's a style that's used for some research papers. But AP style is used by all professional media and our student media staffs. So we want you to use basic AP style too. You're going to end up with a handout of AP style to follow, but here's some basic things to remember. I just wanted to touch on them. You're going to refer to students, faculty, and college employees after the first reference by last name. So even if you're referring to Dr. Bender, you're not going to say Dr. Bender, you're just going to use Bender in second reference. Lowercase the name of an academic department. So this goes against everything you know from English class, but Department of History would be lowercase because that's AP style. You're going to lowercase chapel, as in she attended chapel on Wednesday. That would not be capitalized like it would be in English, but you're going to spell out Central Baptist College in first reference, CBC in second reference. And that reference I made to doctor, we don't use doctor even before a faculty member's name in AP style. AP says that doctor is only used for medical doctors. So if you're referring to Dusty Bender, the head of the history department, you're going to say Dusty Bender, chair of the history department. And then in second reference, Bender. You never would call him Dr. Bender. You're also going to use a student's classification in lowercase before every name, whether they're freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and please spell it correctly. Sophomore does have a extra O. It has 2 O's in it, not just one. Actually, it has 3 O's in it, not just 2. It's sophomore, actually. But anyway, that's used before every name. Here's the structure of a yearbook story, which is also a feature story. In general, the story has this structure: a lead, a paragraph explaining why this person or issue is important on campus, the body of the story with major points, and a conclusion. So let's just touch basically on these quickly. The lead is the first paragraph, and it can do one of these things in a creative or interesting way. I'm going to go over a little bit more about this in a few minutes. But the lead is supposed to get attention, so it needs to do something interesting to pull the reader in and not just say, the basketball team ended their season. It needs to explain something in an interesting or creative way. And then after the lead, there's a paragraph that explains why this person or issue is important on campus. We call this a nut graph also because it tells kind of in a nutshell what the story is about. It's just a background paragraph is what it is. And then the body of the story has the major points you're trying to make with the story. So point number 1 is made and there's quotes from sources on that. Point number 2 is made with quotes, and there can be several more points. I just included 2 here. The conclusion is not like a conclusion you write for an essay. In fact, the best way to end the story is with a direct quote from a source. It's not with you writing a conclusion, but it's a direct quote that refers in some way back to something that was said in the story or maybe kind of sums up the story, but it's a direct quote from a source. We'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. As far as using quotes, try to use both direct and indirect quotes, one after another in the story. Direct, indirect, direct, indirect. Try not to use 3 direct quotes in a row or 3 indirects in a row. And notice in the following story how this works. So here's an example story. This is from the 2016 book that came out this fall. On the night of October 14th, the A.R. Redden Fieldhouse was packed with screaming fans scarfing down food and athletes preparing for the upcoming basketball season. This was Mustang Madness. The Lady Mustangs, junior varsity men and varsity men's teams played scrimmage games to a crowd of more than 300, including family and alumni. To keep the fans involved, many door prizes were raffled off throughout the night. These range from cookies from a local bakery to gift cards to popular stores. Every student attending was given a raffle ticket for attending Mustang Madness. I won a bag of peanut butter M&Ms, said sophomore Jordan Lockhart. It was nice, but I was a little disappointed because the person whose name was drawn after me won a gift card to Red Lobster. Along with door prizes, there were competitions held among students and faculty, including a free throw and 3-point competition. At the end of the night, freshman Jacob Pangle had his name drawn for the chance to win a $100 cash prize if he was able to make a shot from half court. Pangle missed the first 2 shots, but made the final one, making himself $100 richer. I felt extremely blessed that I was able to make the shot because I had to make repairs on my phone and pay for groceries that week, he said. I want to thank CBC for giving me the opportunity to shoot and win. Other students were excited and supportive when Pangle scored the winning basket. I dropped my phone when I was videoing Pangle making the half-court shot, said junior Megan Spear. I was in total shock and started screaming. Other than the games, that shot was the best part of the whole night. That's the conclusion. So what I want to do now is label the story and want to kind of make it clear to you what's going on with it so you'll understand. We're going to kind of take it apart. So the lead is the first paragraph. On the night of October 14th, the A.R. Redden Fieldhouse was packed with screaming fans, scarfing down food, and athletes preparing for the upcoming basketball season. And then this was Mustang Madness. This sentence is actually part of this lead, but we ended up running it as a separate sentence on its own because it just makes it stand out. This is the nut graph, the second paragraph, because this explains just kind of in a nutshell what was happening that night. So Mustang Madness was these teams playing a scrimmage. And then the first point was to talk about the door prizes. So this paragraph is about door prizes, and we've got a direct quote from one of the students who won a door prize. We also went into the second point about competitions, and notice I have a transition here. Along with door prizes, there were competitions. And so you probably remember from English class, transitions connect parts of a paper that aren't connected. It's the same way with a story. So then we have the story of the guy making the half-court shot. We've got a quote from him. We've got other students being excited and supportive. And the conclusion of the whole story is a student that not only was excited because he won, but she mentions at the end, other than the games, that shot was the best part of the whole night. So she kind of wraps up what happened in the story. And so this is a great way to end this story. Let's talk briefly about leads. As I said, they're supposed to get the reader's attention. I've picked out 5 pretty good leads from the yearbook that came out this August. And so I wanted to just share these with you and let you see why these are good leads. So see if any of these would make you want to read more of the story. In the heat of competition, even the closest of friends may find themselves being mortal enemies if they are on opposing teams. This was the case during Hall Wars, which took over campus the week of April 4th through 8th. So this is the lead for a story on Hall Wars. This next one is about a new sport on campus, disc golf. So it's just a 1-sentence lead. Fall 2015 welcomed a change to the sports dynamic on campus, the addition of disc golf. Then here's another one about the fishing club. Junior Cody Golf wanted to start a fishing club from the time he was little. This desire became especially strong, Golf says, when both his parents passed away and he was left with his dad's fishing boat. So this one starts with a story. And then the rest of the actual story about the fishing club talks about how he developed the club, got people to join it, and so it's kind of a cool thing. This next one, in order to be a leader at Central Baptist College, you may have to get up at the crack of dawn. This is what members of the President's Leadership Council had to do twice per month to meet with President Terry Kimbrough. So this goes ahead and talks about what they do in those early morning meetings and what that group did as a whole. And then the last lead is from the softball team. The Lady Mustang softball team had a lot of new in their 2015-16 season with new teammates, new conference, and a new head coach. So then it continues just to talk about how their season went. Conclusions. Stories are best concluded with a direct quote. And I've already said that, but just wanted to remind you, the quote can do any of these things. Refer back to the lead, give perspective about the topic, summarize the story, end with a surprise, look ahead to the future about the topic. So let me go back to what we were saying about leads and just kind of explain several different ways that these stories could have been concluded with a direct quote. So the story here about the guy that wanted to start the fishing club because he inherited his dad's fishing boat, it starts with that. The story could end with a quote from him on maybe how this felt to be fishing with the new fishing club in his dad's boat, or something along that line. The story that's about the softball team having a lot of new things that they had to deal with this year could end with a quote from someone, maybe someone who'd been on the team for a year or two, kind of summing up how even though there were a lot of new things, the team came together and played really well or something like that. So just trying to kind of give you an idea how a story could conclude depending on the quote. As far as writing the story, just like with any essay or anything else you write, you're going to write probably more than one draft of the story. That's your choice. You might just write one, but most people write a draft of it and then they kind of proofread and go over that several times. So you can write it out by hand and then type it up, or you can type it up directly on the computer, but you want to read over it and make sure you have all these parts of the story. You need a lead, a nut graph, and just a reminder, a nut graph is just a paragraph that sums up what the story's about. The point, the first and second point you're trying to make in the story, maybe a third or even fourth point, and then a concluding quote. So your story needs to have all of those parts. You want to proofread the story for grammatical errors, and this goes along with anything you would write in an English class. You want to make sure that you've caught spelling, punctuation, sentence structure problems. You wouldn't want any sentence fragments, run-ons, comma splices, anything like that. You want to be sure you spell people's names correctly. And you want to follow AP style if you can remember the things about AP style. Once the story's written, you're going to send it in to the CBC, the Carillon email, and you'll receive it back within a few days. All stories will have edits or revisions that have to be made, and please take this with constructive criticism because you haven't written like this before. So it's likely there will be many things we ask you to change or correct, and please just take that with a grain of salt. Even if you've been on staff for a while, there's usually things that have to be changed or corrected. We try to catch everything, and we want the story to be the very best version of the story that you write. We also would like to possibly enter it in a competition. So we just want to help you polish your story to be the very best it can be. We still see it as your story, but I just want you to understand it's important to us that everything in it is correct. So you'll continue to make corrections until you're told the story is final. You may end up making corrections 4 or 5 times even. If you're not sure how to make corrections in a Word document, see the editor or see me. Now, the editor is going to give you your first assignment, and she'll explain it to you, It's not going to be a regular assignment. This first one is just kind of to help you see what it would be like to write for the yearbook. So she's going to ask you to write just a simple story about an event that you've recently attended on campus. And this is just to make sure you understand what you could do for a real assignment and how you might write it. She'll give you the details and give you a deadline of when it's due. And there's a couple of things that you can do to make things easier for you this semester or even next semester if you're still writing for us. Come by my office and I'll give you a copy of last year's yearbook or the yearbook from the year before so you can see how to model your stories. And also come by and get a list of faculty members or employees so that you can have their titles and know how to spell their names. So you can do those things if you just come by my office. And you can contact me in one of three ways before 10 o'clock any night. You can call me or text me on my cell phone. Here's my email. And if we're Facebook friends, you can always message me on Facebook. So just wanted to let you know that. And also wanted to just welcome you to staff. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. I just want to tell you good luck in writing your first story.